I used to think I knew my wife. 15 years of marriage to Sarah had given me the confidence of a cartographer who's walked every inch of his territory. I could map her moods, predict her reactions, anticipate her needs, or so I believed, until the landscape began shifting beneath my feet, revealing depths and dangers I'd never imagined. From my desk in our home office, I stare at family photos scattered across the polished surface. Sarah and I on our honeymoon, grinning at the camera with the naive optimism of people who believe love conquers all. Emma losing her first tooth, Jake scoring his first goal. A family Christmas where Sarah still bothered to coordinate our sweaters. How did we get here? When did the woman in those photos, vibrant, loving, present, transform into this corporate automaton who treats our marriage like an underperforming asset? I'm a software engineer, methodical to my core. I design security systems that protect billions in corporate assets, approaching problems with logic and precision. Sarah used to love that about me. My rock, she'd call me, appreciating the stability I provided as she climbed the corporate ladder with ruthless efficiency. Now she finds me boring, predictable, a detail I've pieced together from fragments of phone conversations and the dismissive way she responds to my suggestions. Mark, we'll circle back on that vacation idea when Q3 settles down, she said last week, not even looking up from her phone when I suggested a family trip to reconnect. The signs have been multiplying. Late nights at the office became her new normal. Business trips doubled, then tripled. Sunday dinners, once sacred family time, now happen without her. Her phone buzzes constantly with urgent work messages she shields from view, turning the screen away whenever I enter the room. Emma asked me yesterday why Mommy doesn't eat dinner with us anymore. I had no answer that wouldn't sound like an accusation or a lie. Jake stopped showing Sarah his drawings last month, after she responded to his proudly presented masterpiece with a distracted while scrolling through emails. I've watched my family disintegrate in real time, my analytical mind cataloging every slight, every dismissal, every moment Sarah chooses her career over us. The data points toward a conclusion I'm not ready to accept. Tonight was different. I walked into our bedroom to find Sarah's laptop open on the bed. Before she could snap it shut, I caught a glimpse of a chat window. 2 fragments burned into my retinas in the split second before the screen disappeared. Can't wait for Friday and Mark won't suspect. It's just work stuff, she said, her voice carrying the hollow ring of someone who's forgotten how to lie convincingly to the person who knows her best. I didn't say it wasn't, I replied, maintaining a calmness I didn't feel. She closed her laptop with a decisive click. I'm exhausted. I'm heading to bed early, she announced, gathering her things. Big day tomorrow? I asked, watching her movements carefully. Just the usual meetings. Nothing special, she answered, not meeting my eyes. As she headed to the bathroom, I noticed something unusual. She took her phone with her. In 15 years of marriage, Sarah had never taken her phone to bed. It always charged on her nightstand, disconnected from her until morning. That small detail, more than the suspicious messages or late nights or business trips, sent ice through my veins. The phone, her constant companion, her connection to whoever waited on the other end of those messages, had become more intimate than her husband. I stood in our bedroom, surrounded by the artifacts of our marriage, and finally admitted what my analytical mind had been calculating for months. My wife was having an affair. The evidence had accumulated past the threshold of reasonable doubt. The question now wasn't whether she was betraying me, but what I was going to do about it. As I heard the shower running, I made a decision. If Sarah wanted secrets and subterfuge, I would give her a master class. The software engineer who specialized in security systems would apply those skills to his own home. My wife had just initiated a game she wasn't equipped to win. The following morning, I found myself oddly calm, like a man who'd finally identified the source of a mysterious noise that had been driving him slowly insane. Sarah left for work earlier than usual, kissing my cheek with distant affection before disappearing into her carefully scheduled day. I watched her car pull out of the driveway, noticed the way she checked her appearance one last time in the rearview mirror, and felt nothing but a detached curiosity. Who was she preparing to impress? For 2 weeks, I'd tried all the digital surveillance methods my software engineering background made available to me. I'd checked her browser history, cleared daily, attempted to access her email, two-factor authentication blocked me, even installed tracking software on our home network. She conducted all suspicious activities on her work devices or mobile data. Sarah wasn't just tech-savvy. She was deliberately covering her tracks. This wasn't carelessness or opportunity. This was calculated deception. I needed a different approach. Technology had failed me, which meant I needed something more primitive, more human. Saturday morning found me in the yard, mechanically trimming hedges as my mind churned through possibilities. So absorbed was I in my plotting that I didn't notice Gus Martinez approaching until his weathered hand appeared over our shared fence, holding out a cold beer. "Looks like you could use this more than the shrubs need trimming," he said, his voice gravelly from decades of cigarettes he'd given up 5 years too late. Gus was everything I wasn't. A 68-year-old former Army Ranger with calloused hands and sharp eyes who spent his retirement tending a vegetable garden and observing the neighborhood with military precision. In the 3 years since he'd moved next door, we'd developed an unlikely friendship. He found my technical knowledge fascinating. I admired his practical wisdom and no-bullshit approach to life. I accepted the beer and took a long pull, the cold bitterness matching my mood perfectly. "Woman troubles?" Gus asked, with the directness of someone who'd seen too much to waste time on social niceties. Something in me cracked, the pressure of suspicion, the weight of evidence, the exhaustion of maintaining a facade of normalcy. "I think Sarah's having an affair," I confessed, the words emerging with surprising steadiness. I expected platitudes about communication or marriage counseling. Instead, Gus nodded slowly, his eyes narrowing slightly. "I've been watching," he admitted quietly. "She leaves every Tuesday and Thursday at 7 p.m. sharp. Returns around 11. Always parks 2 blocks away when she comes home. I see her walking up from Miller Street." The beer nearly slipped from my hand. "You've been watching my wife?" I stammered in disbelief. Gus shrugged unapologetically. "I watch everything in my territory. Old habits from Ranger days. Something felt off, so I paid attention. The revelation hit me like a physical blow. While I'd been fumbling with digital surveillance, Gus had been quietly collecting intelligence through simple observation. He'd confirmed my worst fears with nothing more than military-grade attention to detail. "There's more," Gus continued, leaning closer over the fence. "Those yoga classes on Tuesdays? Never seen yoga clothes in your laundry line after. The phone calls she takes in your backyard after the kids are asleep. The way she checks her makeup before leaving on those evenings. Different than her usual work routine." My analytical mind rapidly processed this new data, integrating it with my existing suspicions. "How long have you been noticing this?" I questioned. 3 months, give or take. Started around when that fancy marketing award was announced in the local paper," he answered thoughtfully. 3 months, 90-some days of betrayal while I'd worked late, cared for our children, and tried to rebuild the connection with a woman who was already gone. "In the Rangers," Gus said, "we learned to trust gut instincts. Your gut's screaming danger, son. Question is, what are you going to do about it?" I realized I'd been approaching this like a software problem, looking for digital evidence while ignoring behavioral patterns. "I need proof," I said finally. "Something concrete." Gus drained his beer and set the bottle on the fence post. "You're thinking too much like an engineer. You need to think like a hunter," he advised, watching my reaction carefully. "I've got equipment from my security consulting days. Good stuff, professional grade. Not the toys they sell to paranoid homeowners." "You're suggesting we spy on my wife?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. "I'm suggesting we gather intelligence through traditional methods," he clarified. "Digital leaves traces. Old-school surveillance doesn't." Hope flickered briefly that somehow all of this was a misunderstanding, that Sarah's secrecy had an innocent explanation. "What if I'm wrong?" I wondered aloud. "Then no harm done," he reassured me. "But if you're right—" He left the sentence unfinished. 3 days later, Sarah announced a client dinner on Thursday night. As she hurried out the door, I spotted something that extinguished my last illusion. An overnight bag tucked discreetly in her trunk before she closed it. That night, I found myself at Gus's door well after midnight. He answered immediately, as if he'd been expecting me, a bottle of bourbon and 2 glasses already set on his coffee table. "She's playing you, son," Gus said simply, as I collapsed into his armchair. I stared at the amber liquid he poured, seeing my reflection distorted in its surface. "No," I said finally. "I'm not going to let her." Over the next 2 weeks, my life divided into 2 separate realities. In one, I maintained the illusion of normalcy, attending work meetings, helping with homework, making small talk with my increasingly distant wife. In the other, I became a student of surveillance and strategic planning, absorbing Gus's military expertise with unsettling aptitude. Gus's garage became our war room. Under the pretext of helping him restore a vintage motorcycle, I spent evenings surrounded by surveillance equipment he'd accumulated during his security consulting years. Tiny cameras disguised as smoke detectors, motion sensors that could trigger recording devices, directional microphones that could capture conversations through windows, the arsenal of a professional spy or a man preparing for divorce court. In combat, you learn patience, Gus explained while calibrating a miniature camera so small it could be hidden in a book spine. Good hunters wait for the perfect moment. Rush the shot, you go home empty-handed. My software engineer's mind adapted quickly to this new programming language. Not code, but human behavior patterns and surveillance logistics. I found myself thinking in new terms: sightlines, digital blind spots, behavioral routines. Sarah's predictability, the very quality that had once reassured me, now made her vulnerable to observation. The plan emerged through methodical iteration. I would announce a business trip to Sacramento, a software security conference I'd attended in previous years, making the cover story believable. The trip would span Thursday through Saturday, giving Sarah ample opportunity to bring her lover home if she'd grown bold enough. Gus would monitor from his house using strategically placed cameras, maintaining communication with me via encrypted phones he'd acquired through old military connections. I didn't question. "You sure you can handle what you might see?" Gus asked during one late-night planning session. After we'd determined optimal camera positions in my bedroom, living room, and kitchen, the most likely locations for an intimate encounter, my response surprised both of us. "I need to know, whatever it costs," I declared with newfound resolve. Something shifted in Gus's expression. Recognition, perhaps, of how far I'd traveled from the mild-mannered engineer who'd once asked him for gardening tips. "Sometimes evidence isn't enough," he said carefully. "Sometimes you need to send a message." I should have been alarmed by the implication, but found myself nodding instead. "What kind of message?" I inquired. "That depends on what kind of man you discover yourself to be when the moment arrives," he responded cryptically, cleaning a lens. As our preparations intensified, so did Sarah's suspicious behavior. Her absences grew longer, her stories more elaborate. When I mentioned the upcoming conference, she expressed just the right amount of disappointment, while failing to hide the calculation in her eyes. Within an hour, she'd suggested the children might enjoy staying at her mother's house that weekend, giving her time to catch up on work without interruptions. Every detail confirmed our trap was baited perfectly. My relationship with Emma and Jake became poignant during these preparations. They sensed the tension, responding in ways that broke my heart daily. Emma, at 12, had developed a protective coolness towards Sarah, intercepting her brother's questions about Mommy's absences with the preternatural maturity of children who learn to navigate adult failures. 9-year-old Jake simply drew more pictures, mostly of our family standing together, holding hands under impossibly bright suns, as if he could manifest connection through crayon and paper. One night, helping Emma with algebra homework, I realized I was potentially seeing them in their current family dynamic for the last time. After this weekend, everything would change irrevocably. The thought paralyzed me briefly. "Dad, are you okay?" Emma asked, her young face showing concern too advanced for her years. "Just thinking about a tough problem," I replied, forcing a smile. "Is it about Mom?" She probed quietly. The question caught me off guard. "Why would you ask that?" I countered, surprised by her perception. Emma shrugged with deliberate casualness. "You look at her differently now. Like you're trying to solve a puzzle," she observed wisely. Children see everything. I underestimated how much my daughter had absorbed, how clearly she'd read the subtle shifts in our home's emotional temperature. Sometimes grown-up relationships get complicated, I said carefully. Are you and Mom getting divorced? She asked, her voice small but steady. I considered lying, offering reassurance I couldn't guarantee. Instead, I chose a partial truth. I don't know what's going to happen, Em, but I promise, whatever changes, my love for you and Jake never will, I vowed sincerely. She nodded, turning back to her equations with the resignation of a child who's already anticipated the answer. The final preparation involved giving Gus a house key, ostensibly for emergency access, but both understood the deeper implications. He would have the ability to enter my home if the situation required immediate intervention. The weight of this decision settled over me as I handed over the key, recognizing I'd crossed a line from passive observer to active participant in whatever came next. Friday morning arrived with strange clarity. I packed my overnight bag while Sarah pretended to sleep, though I caught her watching through barely closed eyes. I kissed the children goodbye, holding them longer than usual, breathing in the scent of their hair, memorizing the feeling of their arms around my neck. As I drove away, I glanced in my rearview mirror and saw Sarah already on the phone in our bedroom window, her expression animated with anticipation. She'd been waiting for this moment as much as I had, just for entirely different reasons. The trap was set. The hunt had begun. I checked into a motel 20 minutes outside town, a forgettable place with paper-thin walls and a neon sign missing 3 letters. Sacramento existed only in text messages to Sarah and a carefully constructed digital trail. Flight confirmation emails sent to myself, conference registration receipts, and automated out-of-office response. In reality, I remained close enough to return home within half an hour when the moment arrived. The motel room became my forward operating base. I spread surveillance equipment across the sagging mattress. The encrypted phone Gus provided, a laptop showing live feeds from cameras we'd installed, portable recording devices charged and ready. The methodical preparation kept me functional, prevented me from drowning in the toxic brew of emotions churning beneath my calculated exterior. Gus's first message arrived at 2:17 p.m. Surveillance active. All systems operational. His military background showed in his communications. No wasted words. No emotional content, just facts delivered with tactical efficiency. At 3:30 p.m., target departed house. Shopping trip or setup preparation. I stared at the word target, my wife of 15 years reduced to an objective in a surveillance operation. The term should have bothered me, but instead felt appropriate. Sarah had made herself a stranger. Now she would be treated as one. The updates continued with maddening regularity. 5:15 p.m. Target returned with shopping bags. Appears to be food items and wine. 6:23 p.m. Target showered. Changed clothes 3 times before selecting black dress. Lingerie visible during changes. 7:08 p.m. Target on phone appears excited. Checking watch repeatedly. Each message increased the pressure, confirming our worst suspicions while building toward the inevitable climax. I found myself pacing the small room, checking equipment obsessively, fighting the urge to drive home immediately and confront whatever awaited me there. At 7:46 p.m., the moment I'd both dreaded and anticipated arrived. Company arriving. Black BMW, male, approximately 30, athletic build, confident walk. They're embracing at the door. My hands trembled as I opened the attached photo. Even in the grainy surveillance image, I recognized him immediately. Derek Hughes, Sarah's ambitious junior colleague. The man she'd mentioned with increasing frequency over recent months, whose name peppered her conversations until it became a constant presence in our home. Derek's marketing brilliance, Derek's innovative campaign strategy, Derek's pitch that landed the client everyone wanted. The betrayal cut deeper, knowing Sarah had chosen someone from her professional world, someone who represented everything I wasn't. Young, ambitious, part of her daily life in ways I could never be. Gus's updates became more detailed and damaging as the evening progressed. 8:02 p.m. Dinner preparation in kitchen. Physical contact constant. Using your cooking equipment. 8:37 p.m. Dinner in dining room. Drinking wine from anniversary glasses. 9:15 p.m. Moving to living room couch. Physical intimacy escalating. Each message confirmed my marriage's death, transforming suspicion into undeniable reality. But alongside the pain came something else, a cold, calculating fury that surprised me with its intensity. This wasn't just infidelity, it was invasion. They weren't just betraying me, they were desecrating my home, using the spaces and objects that represented 15 years of shared life as props in their affair. I watched the feed from our living room camera, seeing Sarah laugh at something Derek said, touching his face with familiar intimacy. My wife, in my home, with another man, while our children's photos watched from the mantel. The clinical detachment I'd maintained cracked, revealing something primal underneath. At 10:23 p.m., Gus's most devastating update. Moving upstairs to master bedroom. Target leading subject by hand. I texted back immediately. I'm coming home. Be ready. His response was immediate. Confirmed. Approach with caution. Subject appears physically fit. The drive home passed in a haze of rage and adrenaline. My hands shook on the steering wheel as my mind cycled through images of Sarah and Derek together in our bed, calculating the scope of the betrayal, the duration of the lies, the complete destruction of everything I'd built over 15 years. I parked 3 blocks away, following the protocol Gus and I established during planning. He met me at the designated corner, dressed in dark clothing that made his military background suddenly obvious. His expression showed the same cold determination I felt radiating from my core. Last chance to reconsider, Gus said quietly as we approached my house. Once we go in there, there's no taking it back. Law doesn't look kindly on what we're about to do. My response came from somewhere deep and primal. She brought him into my house, into my bed, where my children sleep, I growled, beyond rational thought. Gus nodded once, accepting this as sufficient justification. Follow my lead. Quick and controlled. Remember the objective. Maximum psychological impact, minimum legal exposure, he instructed calmly. We approached the house like the tactical operation it had become. Gus checked sightlines and identified escape routes with practiced efficiency. The surveillance feed on my phone showed Sarah and Derek still upstairs, completely unaware their sanctuary was about to become a trap. My key turned silently in the front door lock. The house felt foreign, contaminated by what was happening upstairs in my bedroom. Every family photo on the walls, every piece of furniture Sarah and I selected together, every memory embedded in these rooms felt like mockery now. Gus signaled toward the stairs. Through the hallway, we could hear voices. Sarah's laugh, soft and intimate in a way it hadn't been with me for years. Derek's confident murmur promising things I couldn't distinguish. 6 months ago, these sounds would have destroyed me. Now they fueled something much more dangerous. We ascended the stairs with calculated silence, positioning ourselves outside the master bedroom door. I could hear Sarah clearly now, saying Derek's name with breathless intensity, the same tone she'd used with me in the early years of our marriage, before children and careers and the slow erosion of intimacy. Gus looked at me, eyebrows raised in silent question. Ready? I nodded once. With military precision, Gus counted down from 3 using hand signals, then struck the door with his shoulder, sending it crashing inward with explosive force. I followed immediately behind, my vision tunneling to focus on the scene that had haunted my nightmares, Sarah and Derek. Caught in the most intimate betrayal possible, in the bed where my children were conceived. The bedroom door exploded inward with a sound like a gunshot. Time slowed, details burning into my memory with hyper-real clarity. Sarah's expression transitioning from passion to shock to terror in microseconds. Derek's body jerking upright, the sheet falling away. The glow of my bedside lamp casting everything in amber accusation. Derek's reaction was immediate and telling. Instead of fear or shame, his face showed arrogant irritation, as if I were an inconvenience rather than the betrayed husband whose life he was destroying. He turned to Sarah with an incredulous look. "What the hell, Sarah? You said he wouldn't be back until Sunday," he complained, treating my presence as merely an inconvenience. That casual dismissal, the implication that they'd discussed me like an obstacle to be managed, ignited something primal within me. This man knew about me, had been briefed on my schedule and habits by my own wife. I was a character in their story, not even important enough to be the villain, just a complication to be worked around. Sarah's scream cut through the room, a sound of pure panic rather than remorse. "Mark, what are you doing here? This isn't," she stammered, clutching the sheets to her chest, "what it looks like." I finished for her, my voice unnervingly calm even to my own ears. "Then what is it, Sarah? A business meeting? Client relations?" Derek, displaying the arrogance that would seal his fate, reached for his scattered clothes with infuriating confidence. "Look, Mark, let's be adults about this. These things happen in marriages," he began with patronizing calm. My fist connected with his jaw before he could finish the platitude, the impact sending a shockwave up my arm. The blow caught him completely off guard, his head snapping back against the headboard of my bed, the bed I'd assembled when we moved into this house, where I'd nursed Sarah through 2 bouts of flu, where we'd conceived both our children. Derek crumpled against the pillows, eyes wide with disbelief. In that moment, I saw him clearly, not the marketing wunderkind or sophisticated rival, but a soft, entitled man-child who'd never faced consequences for taking what wasn't his. "Mark, stop!" Sarah screamed, clutching the sheet around herself. "You've lost your mind!" "I'm calling the police!" she threatened, reaching for her phone, but I couldn't stop. Every late night she claimed was work. Every lie she told our children about why Mommy couldn't make it to dinner. Every moment of intimacy she'd shared with this arrogant predator fueled blow after blow. I'd never been violent before, had prided myself on rational solutions and emotional control, but something had broken inside me, releasing 15 years of suppressed rage. Gus moved with the calculated efficiency of someone who'd done this before, not participating in my assault on Derek, but positioning himself to ensure the younger man couldn't escape or retaliate. "Stay down," he growled as Derek attempted to rise, applying just enough pressure to the man's shoulder to immobilize him without leaving evidence of restraint. Sarah's reaction shifted rapidly from shock to terror to rage. Initially paralyzed by our sudden appearance, she began screaming for us to stop, then threatening legal consequences, finally attacking me physically to protect her lover. "You're insane," she shrieked, clawing at my arm. "This is assault! You'll both go to prison," she threatened, her priorities crystal clear. The irony struck me even through the haze of violence. After months of betrayal, her first instinct was to protect Derek rather than explain or apologize. Her true loyalty had been revealed in crisis, and it wasn't to her husband or children. Derek, bloodied but defiant, made the critical mistake of trying to fight back, shoving me away with unexpected strength and reaching toward the nightstand drawer. "Get out of my way," he snarled, his earlier polish replaced by primitive aggression. "He's reaching for something," Gus shouted, moving to intercept. What happened next occurred with dreamlike inevitability. Gus, reacting to a potential threat with his military training, applied a restraint technique that went wrong when Derek continued struggling. There was a sickening sound, not quite a crack, more like wet branches breaking, and Derek went limp. His breathing suddenly shallow and labored. Sarah's scream changed pitch, becoming something primal and horrified. "Oh my God! You've killed him!" she wailed, though Derek was still breathing. "I'm calling 911 right now," she announced, lunging for her phone. She dialed with trembling fingers, her words tumbling out in hysterical bursts. "My husband and his friend broke into our house and attacked my colleague. He's barely breathing." "They're still here. Send police now." The clinical description, "my colleague," struck me as bizarrely formal given what we'd witnessed, but Sarah had always excelled at controlling narratives. Even now she was framing the story. Not her infidelity, but my violence. Not her betrayal, but my intrusion. She was repositioning herself from unfaithful wife to innocent victim with the instinctive skill of a born marketer. Gus, oddly calm after the violence, assessed the situation with military practicality. "We need to leave. Now. Before first responders arrive," he urged quietly. But I found myself frozen, staring at Derek's still form, at Sarah's tear-stained face, at the destruction of everything I'd thought my life was. "Mark," Gus urged, his voice lowered to ensure Sarah couldn't record his words. "This isn't the plan. We need to, but it was too late." Sirens wailed in the distance, growing louder with each second. Sarah stood by the window, sheet clutched around her body, phone still pressed to her ear as she provided our descriptions to the dispatcher. Her eyes met mine across the room, not with guilt or remorse, but with the cold satisfaction of someone who'd just regained control of a situation. "I want them arrested," she said clearly into the phone. "My husband Mark Stevens and his neighbor Augustus Martinez. They planned this. They broke in and attacked us." The word "us" hung in the air between us, the final confirmation that she'd chosen sides. And I was now the enemy. Police arrived within minutes, finding Sarah traumatized, Derek requiring immediate hospitalization, and Gus and me standing in silent resignation. As they placed me in handcuffs, reading Miranda rights I barely registered, I experienced a moment of savage clarity. I'd achieved my revenge. Derek would never forget the consequences of his arrogance, and Sarah's affair was permanently shattered. But the cost was everything. My children's respect, my freedom, my future. 6 months later, I signed the final divorce papers in my lawyer's cramped office, officially ending 15 years of marriage with a signature that feels both impossibly heavy and strangely weightless. The pen scratches across the page, a period at the end of a story I never thought I'd be telling. That concludes our business. "Mr. Stevens," my attorney says with the practiced neutrality of someone who's witnessed too many families implode to feel anything anymore. The custody arrangement stands as previously discussed. Supervised visitation only, pending completion of your anger management program and psychological evaluation, he reminds me dispassionately. I nod, not trusting myself to speak. The terms of my defeat are comprehensive and irrevocable. The assault charges resulted in 18 months probation, a merciful sentence, considering what might have happened, but the real punishment is measured in the things I've lost. Sarah's testimony painted me as an unstable, violent man who'd been stalking her and planning the attack for weeks. Gus's military background and our premeditated surveillance made our actions appear calculated and dangerous rather than crimes of passion. Derek's hospitalization, 3 broken ribs, a fractured jaw, and severe bruising, provided undeniable evidence of excessive force. The custody hearing was a formality. Emma, now 13, refuses to speak to me entirely. Her last words to me, delivered in the courthouse hallway under Sarah's watchful eye, remain embedded in my consciousness. "I thought you were different from other dads. I thought you were safe." Jake, at 10, still agrees to see me, but asks heartbreaking questions about why Daddy hurt Mommy's friend. The children I tried to protect from Sarah's betrayal now need protection from me. The greatest irony is Sarah's transformation. The assault turned her from unfaithful wife to traumatized victim overnight, garnering sympathy from friends, family, and colleagues who rally around her strength in leaving a dangerous marriage. Our mutual friends chose sides unanimously, hers. Even my own parents expressed cautious concern about my mental state rather than support. Derek, recovered but scarred, received a promotion and transfer to the company's London office, a fresh start funded by corporate sympathy for his workplace violence experience. His Instagram shows him exploring European cities, apparently untroubled by the destruction in his wake. I live alone in a studio apartment across town, working contract jobs since my employer terminated me following the conviction. The methodical software engineer who once planned elaborate family vacations now struggles with basic social interactions. Marked forever by my reputation for violence, Gus, surprisingly, received a lighter sentence due to his veteran status. During one of our rare conversations, he showed no remorse. Sometimes justice requires blood, he told me, still believing we'd done what was necessary. But I've learned the hard difference between justice and vengeance. Justice builds something better, while vengeance only destroys. I set the perfect trap, only to discover too late that I was the prey all along. In seeking to punish betrayal, I became something worse than a victim. I became unrecognizable to myself and to the children who once thought I hung the moon. Sarah may have destroyed our marriage, but I destroyed myself. And so, we've reached the end of today's story. Was it what you expected, or did it take a twist you didn't see coming? I'm curious to hear your thoughts. Share them in the comments below, and let's get a conversation going. If this story kept you hooked, make sure to hit that like button. And if you're new here or just haven't subscribed yet, now's the perfect time to join our community. I bring you fresh, captivating stories every day, so click that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss out. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.